All right, here we go, everyone. Another awesome episode of the All Around Adventure podcast, and kicking off 2021. I have my friend Alex Starr returning for round two. Alex, what's going on, man? Thanks so much for joining me again.
What's up, man? I'm the first in 2021. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I came up with a term for all return guests on the podcast, and I went over this with my younger brother who had just appeared on the show, and I say, repeat offenders is what I think I'm going to refer to all return guests.
I'm down. I'm down. I love it.
Right on, man. All right. Well, you've been on the show before, and, for anyone who hasn't listened to our first conversation, I definitely would recommend people go back and do that. But I mean, so you've kind of shared a lot of your story with us already, but I guess just going into round two here, why don't you just give us your elevator pitch. I mean, just really quick, just let our audience or any new listeners know who you are.
Who the hell is this guy pitch? Why should I listen to you pitch?
Man.
Yeah, basically, I mean, my elevator pitch, my short story is that, like a lot of people, I went through high school, I went through college because that's what you did, without question, towards my very loving and very well-intentioned parents and society and things like that. And I found myself at the end of college, looking back now, really relying on alcohol a lot and spending my entire life really revolving around girls, parties, alcohol. And looking back now, it was kind of actually a somewhat depressing and lost time of my life when, a lot of people say that a lot of the movies portray college as being the best time of your life. And looking back now, it was by far the worst time of my life. Knowing what I know now. And I think from that, I didn't want to get a 9-to-5. I just knew that I wanted to do a little bit more. I didn't want to be stuck in a job. I had lived a pretty decent life until then. And I knew that I just wanted to give something back. I wanted to explore. I wanted to see what was outside of the box that had been presented to me my entire life. And from there, I went into AmeriCorps. So I know you did Peace Corps. So AmeriCorps is a domestic Peace Corps. I did that for a year. Through there, I learned what wildland firefighting was. I had no idea what the fuck it was before that. And so I did kind of some training through there. I worked in a homeless shelter. And then when I got out, I went in and did 3 seasons of wildland firefighting in Arizona, flying around in helicopters, meeting a million different types of people. And that whole sequence is what really set up my life towards like just going down this completely different path than everybody else. And through that is where I started the podcast during my travels and during talking to people about them sharing their stories of like, I remember my buddy Kyle, who was on my wildland firefighter crew. He was the one that really inspired me to start the podcast because he had his MBA in accounting. He paid for it by his parents. He was making good money at this job, and he slowly started to just completely hate his life. And he woke up one morning, he was telling me the story as we're on this dusty road on the way to some like fire on the horizon. And he's just telling me the story. And he basically got to the point where he hated his life and he just was absolutely dreading going into work. And he hit a point, he said, where he was looking at his computer one afternoon and he was staring at the spreadsheet. And it finally hit him that if he didn't want to do this, then he didn't have to do this. And he said he went home that night and he had always wanted to be a firefighter. And he started Googling things up on how to become one and started taking those steps. And by the time I was talking to him, he was on his 2nd season, I believe. He's still a firefighter to this day. He's like 8 years in or something like that. And he didn't look back. And he had all those fears around, what his parents were going to say. His parents paid for his MBA and what his friends would say and this and that. And he just realized he didn't want to fucking do it anymore. And so it was those stories that I heard from people that made me kind of realize, man, there's a lot of people that could benefit from hearing this story. And I started hearing more and more of those of unique lifestyles and mindsets and just stories that I wanted to share. So that's why I started the Rewrite the Rules podcast and have been continuing with that when I moved to Austin. And then here we are. And now I have the book coming out. And now that's it. That's my fucking 5-minute elevator pitch.
All right. Right on, man. So like, what have you been up to since we last had you on the show? You said you had like since moved to Austin, I believe. And this was about, I think about 2 years.
Yeah. Like when we talked, I was in Austin. So dude, you know what's really funny, man, is when we did our podcast, I was in this house, but I was in a different room. And at the time, my then girlfriend, now fiance, so that changed.
Congrats.
Yeah, thanks, man. She still had this house, and then we moved to 2 other locations, and now we're back in this long story. Get into mortgage stuff another time, finances and things like that. But we are now back in the same house 2 years later, and I didn't realize that until I sat down. I was like, oh my God, last time I talked to Josh was in the same house, but in the other room. And between there, we've lived in 3 other places, and now we're back. So it's kind of come full circle. But yeah, man, since the last time, I mean, put a lot of effort into getting this book out into the world. And yeah, focused a lot on the, like, my romantic relationship, to be honest, because that's I think that's a big that can be a big hurdle a lot of times. It was for me, at least. In
Sure.
terms of, that big C word, the commitment was a big thing. And me, actually, we kind of hit this point in our relationship where we it was kind of like, it was make or break in terms of, like, do you want to be kind of more like official? Do you want to be boyfriend, girlfriend or not? And maybe it's a guy thing. I think there's a lot of friends of mine that are females that have the same problem, where you just kind of hit that point, and you're just so accustomed to running away. You just, oh, we're hitting this point. I know what to do here. See ya. And and I think at this one, I didn't want to do that, but I was having a really hard time stopping my habit, my internal habit of doing that. I was having a hard time stopping it and stopping the identity I had surrounded myself with in terms of the identity around being the single guy, right? Mm-hmm. And so it took me a lot of, like, self-reflection, and I actually did, like, a decent amount of shrooms one day, and that really helped see things clearly. Of, like, I saw the pattern that I was repeating, and I remember thinking to myself, I remember imagining where I was going to be if I didn't stop that pattern. And that's, after doing that, the next day is when I was like, all right, let's be boyfriend, girlfriend. and we made that step. So I guess, yeah, man, like that's been a huge thing, is especially at this age. I'm 31. I think you're around the same age, right? And
35. Yeah.
35.
Just turned in December 1st. Yeah. That was my birthday.
You're an upper millennial. Yeah. You get it.
Yeah. I'm like right on the cusp, I think, of being a millennial.
You are,
I think. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm like right in the thick of it. And you're kind of like, what's above you? What's above millennial generation?
That's a good question. I mean, it's just, I hear all these different letter designations for the different generations.
Z is Z? Oh, we're Generation Y. Millennials are Generation Y, and we're millennials. Generation Z is below us. And then I don't know what's in between us and boomers.
I know.
X maybe or something.
Well, we're running out of alphabet to designate our generations as.
I know. Seriously, are they seriously going to start with A again after the kids beneath us?
I don't know. They might start off with Greek alphabets like they do with hurricanes. So I mean, they're going to start off with, like, alpha generation, and then beta, and then so on and so forth. Maybe.
Oh, I can't wait for the generation beta. There's going to be generation alpha, and then generation beta.
Mm. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We'll see what comes of that. I mean, you and I, we still have a good amount of time left on this earth. It'll be interesting to see how generations pan out from here on out. So,
fuck, man. Yeah.
All right. Cool, man.
God willing. Yeah.
All right. Well, you kind of hinted at your book that you said that you've been working on these past couple of years since we last talked. And actually, it was really cool. And, just to kind of give our listeners a little bit of context, I mean, you reached out to me just this past weekend. And so this is a pretty spur of the moment podcast interview that we're doing here. But
yeah, awesome.
When I had you on the podcast last time, though, I pitched you the question of what is one thing on your bucket list. And you said it was to write a book. And then
did I really say that?
You did say that. And
how
it's
the fuck do you remember that? Did you listen to our podcast before this?
I went back and, re-listened and everything just to check it out. But yeah, that was your answer to that question. What you said, your one thing on your bucket list was to write a book. Oh. And lo and behold, you did it, man. So
cool.
That's fucking A right. Cool, so, so I guess, yeah, let's go ahead and kind of just get into that. I mean, this is going to kind of set the framework for the rest of our conversation here. So, give us a little bit of a synopsis about your upcoming book. You got it coming out, this month. And I say this month as in, like, this episode is going to be released on January 1st. And I know it's going to be released later in January. So, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's coming out January 26th. Yeah, it's a for anybody listening, I mean, I think what I've learned through describing the book process to a lot of people is that I think a lot of us have this archaic view of that, like you have to write this book and then you have to get it published through this publisher, or we see kind of like cheap ass ebooks online that are usually used for lead magnets to get your email address, right?
Right.
Which, like, there's nothing against that. I'll probably do that for like the first chapter of my book, but like there's just like you either have this kind of crappy ebook or you have to go through a publisher. Well, and if anybody listening, and including you, Josh, if you wanted to write a book, there's literally no better time than now, because using Amazon as an example, like once you finish your book, obviously you want to write a good book, and there's a lot of steps to it that we can kind of get into, around the process of writing the book. And I'll tell you what the book's about in a sec for sure. But, nowadays you can write a good book. You get a cool title on it, a cover on it, which you can pay someone on Upwork to do all this stuff, right? I'm talking to do everything to have a nice polished book out. And really the only thing you're gonna have to spend is for editing and for probably cover design and interior layout, unless you're really good at that stuff. You're looking at $1,000,
really,
maybe $2,000 for everything to have something out into the world that's going to last forever. And then, so the cool thing is that once you finish that and you upload it, if you have an Amazon account, you are now a publisher. Congratulations. So you literally upload it to your Amazon account, and that you can order proofs of it. Like, these are proof copies that I have. And then the day that you say it's published, right? So when mine goes live on January 26th, if you go and buy one on January 27th, you buy a paperback, Amazon prints the thing, sends it to you, and then sends me my, like, if I put it for $13, I'll get like $5 from that. So you don't have to do anything. You don't have to, in the old days, like buy 100 of them and then try and sell them somewhere. Like, Amazon's the publisher, Amazon's the shipper, and they're the payer too. So anyway, just like as a side note, if anyone's thinking about doing a book, it's so easy nowadays to obviously work on putting something out quality, but they make it exceedingly easy.
So it's more or less just becomes automated once you get everything set in place, basically.
Right now, yeah, my work now is like getting like the marketing aspect of it and stuff, but like
the
actual sales of the book. My job now, I saw this great thing that said, like, for all artists and authors and things like that, it's like once you create whatever piece of art you're working on, your job now, like, you're now a marketer, and forget about being an artist. Once it's completed, it's done. And now your job is to market it, to get people to see your painting, to hear your music, to read your book, whatever it is. So they make it really easy. But yeah, I mean, the book was a compilation of kind of the story I told at the beginning, where I've done a little over 100 podcasts. I've talked to billionaires, cognitive scientists, people living in a van, people that have given up money, polyamorous couples, world travelers, best-selling authors, just all these different people, different mindsets, different lifestyles, like I've talked about, different stories and ways of living the world, if that's right, it's the way to say that.
Sure, yeah.
Living the world, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
I skipped in.
Second book title.
Something good. Yeah, living the world. Yeah. Yeah. And I took my kind of like half memoir, almost like lessons learned from these different stories in firefighting and AmeriCorps, and like kind of me deviating after college, like I talked about, and then taking the best conversations and best lessons learned from all those different people that I just mentioned I've talked to over the years, and like digging through all of that, through all my journals for the past fucking 10 years, through everything I've ever written, through every single podcast, all the transcriptions, and digging out every piece of like gold I could to make this book as like a framework for all the people that are like in that place that they like have kind of given up on goals, or they lost track of where their place is in all of this, or, want to figure out a way to get out of the status quo that has just been thrown on us, right? Because the biggest thing for me is that, like, nobody chooses the system that we're in. Like, we're born into like this hierarchy. We're born into this government. We're born into the way that government looks, the way that the way that you eat food, the clothes that you wear, the way that you talk. And I make the point in the book that, like, it doesn't mean that, I'm not saying it's always a bad thing, but I'm also not saying that it's always a good thing, and it's like this itch that's hard to scratch. Like, we're all wondering, like, is this the only way to do this? There must be other options. is this really what life is all about? You know, like, is this how I'm supposed to feel all the time? So this, I hope, is like the antidote to those feelings.
Yeah, and it's kind of just like, as you mentioned, it's like it almost feels like we're just kind of just going through the motions. We're more or less just like riding the waves, and it's just. And again, I think like when the way a lot of people may choose to live their lives, it's not necessarily wrong. That's not what we're saying. I mean, some people may prefer the 9-to-5 lifestyle and, making bank and living in the big house with the white picket fence. That's all fine. We're not knocking that. But
well,
then,
I for sure want to make bank. Yeah, that has nothing to do with it.
Right. Of course. Yeah. But then, you do have like those mindsets. You brought up the example of the gentleman that you were talking about who basically had the MBA, was just killing it in the realms of business, but then decided he wanted just to slug it out, fighting fires in the wilderness, and found a lot more fulfillment doing that way. But, and a lot of that, and I know this is a big part of your book as well, is just kind of just comes from just, being intentional, having intentionality, kind of knowing what you want and just making the intentional decisions to, pursue those things. So let's go ahead and we'll dive into that next. And again, this is kind of just going to be a little bit of I guess I'll say a preview of kind of what your book is going to entail, and to live intentionally, break that down for us. What does that kind of like mean to you?
I think it's just about clearing out as much as the bullshit as humanly possible, all of your preconceived notions about who you think you are and who the world wants you to be, and doing that as much as possible to get down to the core of who you are, whether that's through surfing or meditation or shrooms or baking banana bread or going for walks in nature, and constantly wiping the windshield of society and all of these things that are put on us, and then being honest with yourself about what it is that you want. Right. And you're right. Like, and that changes over time too, because we change, it's like, yeah, like you said, I know I have friends who work 9-to-5 jobs. There's a big thing in society right now that is like fuck jobs, fuck the 9-to-5. And like, a big piece of that I talk about is that, going against society just because it's society is the same thing as going with society. You're not doing anything different. You're literally just choosing values that aren't yours. You're either going against what everybody's saying just because you want to go against it, or you're going with everybody because you want to go with it. So I think it's just getting very openly clear and being like, I do want to be in a committed married relationship and have 2 kids with a nice house and a stable job. And, but I'd also like to travel to a fucking commune in Greece every 6 months and like learn how to garden or whatever it is. I don't know. You're like, every person's got that different stuff, and being honest about that, and not when you think of that thing, that when you hear that, when you're in that silence mode and you hear that voice that says you really should pick up painting again, and not reverting to that other voice that says, well, what are people going to think you when you pick up painting? You're an accountant. You should post some of those things on Instagram. What will your friends from work say? What will these people think? What will that happen? Right. That you have the battling identities, you have that real core one that's real quiet, that little whisper that's telling you should pick up the paintbrush. Then you got the real loud motherfucker in the back that's drunk and is yelling at you to put it back down because that doesn't fit what your perceived identity that you've constructed tells you that you should be doing. So I think it's about like being intentional is washing as much as you can away to just getting clear on like what it is you want. What is it you want at the time in your life? And that's going to change.
Right. Yeah. And in this day and age, especially like with the world of social media, it's just, I think a lot of times many people would be trying to, like, let's say, seek validation, from others. There's kind of like that endorphin rush where you post a picture that you think is really cool, and then you keep checking, Instagram to see how many people like it and comment. Dude, and things
I
like
do
that.
I literally did that yesterday. I posted I'll post a story, and then I'll forget that I haven't checked it in 3 hours, and I'll look to see, who liked it and how many people liked it. And then it's like this compulsion that I go back to. And I just keep looking at my pictures to, oh man, that's right. Last month, 100 people liked this picture. Ooh, that's cool. I got 100 likes on this, It's just like a giant ego fest in my room by myself.
Yeah. So it becomes like one of those things where, a lot of people would make decisions or set, courses and paths for their lives, kind of hoping that maybe it would please the people around them, or again, seek validation from others, or at the very least avoid negativity or negative remarks from others, because I think I kind of struggled with this a little bit when I kind of first started podcasting, because, I'm thinking to myself, oh man, if I put out this episode, are people from high school going to see it? I mean, are people going to make fun of me? Are people going to want to argue with like the points that I put out or whatever? And maybe you might have experienced the same thing too, when you put out your podcast initially.
I 100% did. It took me a year to put it out because of all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And did you by chance have any like worries, being an aspiring author, maybe just kind of like the same thing, trying to put your words out there in writing?
Dude, that's a good question, man. I did. It's weird. I mean, tell me if this is what happened when you did podcasting, because I feel like there's a common artistic journey that you go on, where first you have that massive mountain of resistance that's telling you all the reasons why you shouldn't. For me, it was like, yeah, my friend, what are people going to say? What are people from high school, college, when they listen to it, what are they going to think? And I literally spent a year thinking of, the name's got to be perfect on the website and all this really stupid stuff that just resistance get winning. And for with the book too, it's like, I knew I always wanted to write a book since I was like 10. I started writing it. I felt really good about it. And then I hit that resistance more in the middle, where like a buddy of mine that was kind of walking me through the process, who's an editor. And it's like probably halfway through the process where I just hit this wall where I was like, dude, this fucking sucks. Like, no one's going to want to read it. Like, the things that I write that I think are nice are people are going to look at it and be like, wow, this guy's trying too hard, or he's not trying hard enough. Or I've read this stuff before. It's kind of like what you said before. I think we turned it on that like, you're not going to please everybody. So, but I hit that massive just thing where I just didn't want to write anymore. And he was like, I called my buddy Greg, who is an amazing editor, and he helped me edit the book. And I told him what I was experiencing, and there was some silence on the other end of the phone. And he was like, good, you made it. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, this is perfect. I'm like, wow, I'm confused. And he's like, yeah, you're on the right track. That means you're on the right path. Keep going. And then he hung up, and that was it. He's like, I got to go, and left. And I was like, okay. And that's kind of the way Greg does things. But he really made it clear over multiple phone conversations that like, that is what is supposed to be happening. He's like, if you didn't feel, another thing he told me was like, if you weren't thinking that or experiencing it, then I'd be concerned, because it means you're not writing anything even remotely good. It means you're probably just writing whitewashed bullshit that is like regurgitated from other people. And if you have no hesitation and no reservation and no resistance to what you're putting out, then it's probably not anything worth putting out.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that is exactly what you and I talked about before we hit record here, is just knowing that we're not going to please everybody. It's just, we may get 100 people to say that they really like something that we put out, but then we'll get like the one person who just has something bad to say about our work. And normally it's just that one negative comment that usually just seems to just, I don't know, it just sticks out like a sore thumb amongst like all these other positive comments. But, unfortunately, that's just the reality of the situation, no matter what we do. And I brought up the example that you and I could go kick down the doors to a burning building and save everybody inside, and someone's still going to think that we're an asshole for doing so. It's
for
just
sure.
kind of the way it is. So, yeah. But
I'm definitely I'm actually setting a reward for myself when I get my first bad review on the book. Like I told Ashley, my fiance, that, and a couple friends, that, I'm excited for all the good reviews, but I'm actually really looking forward to getting that first bad review that just fucking rips me to shreds, because that's kind of how I'm going to tell myself I know I made it. And it means I put something out that was worth writing a bad review about in some weird way,
Yeah, that someone.
I'm saying this now until I get it, and I'm gonna be crying by myself in the corner. But I'm gonna try and do that.
Well, I guess the good way to look at it, though, and I've had other friends, kind of say this. They said if someone leaves them a bad review or gives them a really, really long, lengthy negative comment, they said, I should be upset about this, but the thing is, this person took all this time and energy and space in their head on me. And it's like, yeah, I'm okay. All right. I can dig that.
That's another good way to look at it. Yeah. Is, what's that kind of that saying? I see it like it's like a mean girl meme or something where it's like, whether you're talking good or talking bad about me, you're talking about me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that kind of thing.
Yeah, or it was like the Pirates of the Caribbean quote where they said, "You're indeed the worst pirate, Jack Sparrow, that I've ever heard of." And he says, "Yeah, but you've heard of me, though."
Dude, the OG Pirates movie is that holds up tremendously well.
Yeah, definitely. So that was a good film. It was a good film. So, all right, man. Well, I want to actually kind of dive a little bit into the process of actually, writing this book. I mean, obviously, you say now you're at the point where people order it off of Amazon, and the process is more or less automated. And you just got to be a marketer at this point. But actually, going through authoring. That's a word, right? Authoring.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. So authoring, exactly, like, how did you kind of like break this down? Did you kind of have like just, I guess, benchmarks of like word counts or chapters, like as you kind of went about this? How did you kind of break that down?
Yeah, so I was lucky to have my buddy Greg, who, like I said, is a world-class editor and has worked on 100 best-selling books before, help me through this process. But
nice.
The process goes, I thought that you just sat down and started writing. That's what I thought you would do. I thought, just sit down and start writing and let the words flow and let it kind of come out of you. And he was like, yeah, you should do that after you make an outline. Don't just start writing. So basically what we did, we constructed and anyone listening, this is kind of the rough template to follow, is, I wonder if I'll put up like a revised version of it at let's see, I'll do alexstarr.com/book outline. Let me make a note of that.
Cool. Yeah.
So I'll put that up there. So anyone who wants to start a book, I would start with this document, and it kind of starts with like walking you through what's the purpose, like what value is the reader going to get out of it. It throws it all on the reader, right? A lot of times we sit down and it's like, I want to tell my story, and like, and people want to hear your story, but only if it benefits them. Like we pick up the book because we want to get something out of it, and maybe that's entertainment through your story, but anyway, it starts with looking at what is the reader getting out of it, kind of walking through the chapters, supporting stories for the chapters. This is nonfiction, by the way, right? So the fiction is a totally different animal that I have no idea about. This is all nonfiction type books. And then from there, once you set up that outline, then you set the bar really fucking low. I've learned that through writing. I've used that through the rest of my life, is I set the goals of my day very small, and if I do that consistently, it adds up to a very big life. I used to do it the opposite. I used to try and do a million things in one day and all of them big, and I would inevitably not finish them and then get burnt down and bummed out on myself, and I wouldn't want to do them the next day. So with writing, I think I did like 250 words like 5 days a week was my goal. And 250 words is not that much. It's like a large paragraph.
Right.
It's very small, right? Some days I wrote literally 250 words, barely, and they were complete and utter garbage. Other days I'd sit down and write 2,000 words, and I swear to God, it was like, Jesus coming through me, the angels coming through my fingertips onto the keyboard.
You're just in the zone, basically.
You know how it is. You just get in the zone. But I think a lot of people have talked about that, like, I think it's Stephen Pressfield or one author talks about like the sage. What is that phrase where it's like the they talk about the sages coming down to help you do like artistic work, and it's like I can never you can't force the sage to come down and help you, but I know that if I sit down every day at 9 a.m. he'll show up as well, or something like that, where like by doing that consistently over time, you just start to build. So 250 words 5 days a week. After 8 months or something, I had 150 pages or whatever it was. And then from there, once you kind of word vomit everything out, then the real work begins, because then you start to edit and compile and re-edit and recompile and have people read it and say, this is terrible. This doesn't make any sense. I love this. Compile it again, re-edit. And then you go through the copy editing phase, which I had no idea about, which is a professional that helps you kind of make sure everything is streamlined. Then you have everything proofread. And then you have a professional put it all together with the layout and the cover and everything, and give you a digital version of this that you can turn into the ebook or the paperback.
Yeah, you know, and there's a lot of parallels between writing a book and basically just trying to achieve anything else in your life too. You know, I had saw on your Instagram, and I meant to congratulate you on this, that you actually completed Andy Frisella's 75 Hard program. So,
oh yeah, man, I'm starting it again on January 4th. If you want to do it, yeah.
Yeah, I do want to do it. Yeah, for sure. And but it's just that basically that whole program is basically centered around just being consistent. I mean, like literally, if you miss a single day, you start back all over again, you know? But I mean, it's just, and that's just kind of the way things like go. I mean, a lot of people would think that, like, you know, they kind of have to just hit everything so harshly, like right from the get-go when they start off a journey, you know, where it's like, if we use this fitness example for say, it's like, you don't run 13 miles like right away. If you've never run before, you start with 1. And then you build up to 2, and then eventually you get up to that half marathon status, and maybe eventually onto, like, you know, full marathon status. But, and it's definitely, you know, really, it shows like here with the book too, where it's like, you don't just have to, you're not going to just like write an entire book in a single night. You know, it's just, it's just little bits here and there until eventually.
And you know what? Some nights I wrote a big, like I wrote 5 pages, you know, but other days I wrote literally a sentence. And but as long as, and you know what, the other thing too, man, is like, I know I said I did 250 words 5 days a week. That was my goal. A lot of weeks I did 3 days, and some weeks I did all 7. I would say averaged out, it was 5. So it was almost like the like being consistent, being moderately consistent in like the micro part of it, being moderately consistent in the macro part of it. And then by the end of a year, which is a really long time, I had 45,000 words. And I swear, Josh, when it was done, I was like, I don't know when I wrote all this. I'd look back at pages. It's like I had 150, 160 pages on the Word document on the Google Drive. I was like, I don't know when I wrote all of this, because I didn't. There was no time I wrote all of it. I wrote it just little tiny bit, little tiny bit, little tiny bit, little tiny bit. And somehow at the end, it added up to a fucking book. That was kind of it.
Yeah. And you know, that's a good way of looking at it too. You know, if you were to just say, oh shit, I have to write a book, you know, and knowing how big this book is and what this book entails. And again, we can use these other examples like, you know, it's like, oh, I have to, like, you know, run 26 miles to complete this marathon, you know, or whatever else. It's like, well, let's not focus on the whole big picture, you know, when we just have to focus on like this first milestone first, you know,
or that day.
Yeah. Or like that day. It's like, and I also heard like the Green Berets, when they were going through their assessment and selection, they say, just focus on the next 5 minutes, get through this first 5 minutes, get through the task that you have for that time period, and then focus on like the next task. Because if they had to like look at like the whole months and months of training to complete that program, then that's what led to many people getting discouraged and maybe not finishing it because it just seems so long and daunting. But it's like you break it down to just these small achievable goals and just hack them away one at a time. Then eventually you just reach your destination. And it's definitely seems to be what happened with you with writing the book.
For sure, man. Yeah, I know you're former military, and so I know you talk to a lot of those similar type people. And the Navy SEALs I've talked to on the podcast, I read a great book called The Heart and the Fist. I don't know if you ever read that one.
No, I haven't.
It's a fantastic Navy SEAL book. And but yeah, that's the common theme. That's the one common theme that seems to be that separates the people who make it and the people who don't, in whether it's buds or boot camp or you know, SEALs or life or whatever it is it's just like not focusing so much on where it is in a year. It's just like, okay, well, I have to get up at 6 a.m. this morning and write 100 words, or I need to go for a walk around the block, or, you know, I'm going to choose to save this $100 instead of blowing it on beer, you know? And like, it's made up in those moments, you know, but that's the hardest part, because I don't know about you, but like I think most people, even more so now, are impatient, but I don't want to wait. I want to be a millionaire now. Like I want to be I wanted to be a best-selling author 2 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, So that's the hardest mental game, I think, is being able to do what you just described, just focusing on what's in front of you.
Yeah, we definitely kind of live in that era of instant gratification, don't we? It's just, I mean, you don't even have to cook your meals anymore. Just, type a few buttons on your phone. Someone's going to bring a ready-made meal to your door. But it's just, and I think speaking of social media, that's kind of like, I think sort of the dissolution that many people might have. They see, these like millionaires and billionaires like kind of showcasing highlights of their big baller lifestyle and just think immediately that they were overnight successes, right? But then what they don't see is that those overnight successes took like 20 years, and lots and lots of highs and lows, being broke, going through, and some have even gone through depression or divorces and just all kinds of just, ugly times in their lives before they actually were able to get to that point where they were posting highlight reels. And so that's why I kind of like having conversations like you and I have, because it's like, you got this reward, of now being able to share your work with the public through your book. But it took a little bit of grinding. It took a little bit of time. It's not like, oh, hey, here, read my book. It's just like,
I have so much more. So did you ever read The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson?
I know the book, but I haven't made to that one yet. I read Unfuck Yourself by Gary John Bishop. I don't think that falls in this. I don't know if it really falls in the same category, but it's the only other word that had fuck in it.
There was a trend for those 2 years where everyone was writing books with swear words in it, which was like, it was kind of my jam until I realized that everybody was doing it. But
and it lost its appeal. Yeah.
yeah. But I just use his book as an example because it was okay, but it sold like, I mean, millions and millions of copies. And I read it and just thought, oh, this book is okay. It's not mind blowing. But then once I kind of like what you were just saying, like once I finish this, or, anyone who, it's probably the same as like raising kids, I would imagine. I don't have any kids yet, but whenever I see people who are raising kids, it's like, yeah, like even my parents, it's like, well, you raised me. Yeah, I don't know. I ate, I shit, and now here I am. Big whoop-de-doo. But then I'm sure when you have kids, you're like, oh my God, this is what my parents went through to raise me. You hear of so many people who have so much more appreciation for their parents once they have kids.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I've written this book, which, I think is the best work I could do at this moment. It's not my end all be all, but I have so much more appreciation for his book. Is just the one that sticks out in my mind of like, I kind of reread parts of it and I was like, oh my God, this guy put so much work into the writing this, than just appears on the surface when you read it as like before I wrote the book, it's like, oh yeah, he put some words on paper and whoop-de-doo. It's not that good. It's like, now I look at it and it's like, oh my God, man, that took so much work. I appreciate it way more.
Awesome, man. Well, I know we have limited time with you today. So before we kind of start getting to our wrap up, let's just, recap really quick when our listeners can expect the book, where they can go to find it. And yeah, it's just, how can they get it in their hands, man?
Yeah. I mean, right now, if you're listening to this right now, if you go to alexstarr.com/rewrite the rules book, you can get the first 23 pages for free. And I did the first 23 pages just because that's where it like neatly cut off like 3/4 of the way through the first chapter, or else it was gonna confuse everybody. So if you go there, you can check out the first 23 pages, see if it's something that you would enjoy. And the book actually will be on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all that stuff on January 26th. So you'll be able to get it there in paperback, ebook, the whole 9 yards.
All right, cool, man. And I'll get those linked up in the show notes for our listeners to go and find them there. All right. So a couple of new things that I've implemented into the wrap-up process that, shortly after you and I had first talked, I've been asking my guests to issue a challenge to our listeners, because we kind of covered some good information today, but as you know, information can only go so far. Action has to follow to make shit happen. So what I'm going to ask for you to do today is, what challenge would you issue to our listeners for them to go out there and start living a more adventurous life?
Ooh, damn. That's a good question, dude. I would start small. I would start really small, and I would find someone. We all have these people in our phone books in our life that we have been meaning to call. and we see them on our Instagram, we see them on our phone book, whatever, sometimes, and go, damn, I need to call that person. I for sure have like 3 that I can think of. Josh, you have a couple you can think of off the top of your mind? Yeah, when I say that.
Oh yeah.
If you haven't, if they're those people, and especially if you haven't talked to them in over 6 months, call 3 of them in the next week.
All right.
And your life will be so much better.
Yeah.
There's nothing good that can come out of it. It will be adventurous. You don't have to leave your home. You'll reconnect with people, which biologically has the most correlation to your happiness and well-being. And literally it'll add so much to your life just by calling those people.
Right. And actually do it via phone call. Like actually use your voice for this one. Yeah, yep. For sure.
Yeah, no text. Texting doesn't count. I have people that I think I'm decently good at that. And I still have people that and it's like this weird fear that still comes up. I know these people want to hear from me. I would love to hear from them. And there's still that weird voice when I look at my phone going, not now, tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes along and I go, no, not now, tomorrow. And then fucking a year goes by.
Right. Yeah. So, well, cool, man. And that's a first to come up on the podcast. So nice. For when I asked this question. So I appreciate that. Yeah. All right. Now the next 3 questions, you've answered these before, but I'm curious to see if your answers had changed since last time. And we're going to do this kind of rapid fire, almost like a word association, just kind of think which first comes to your head. So the first one is favorite place that you've been to so far
in the world.
And anywhere, space even
besides my mother's womb. I have a lot of nostalgia and memories around Southern Arizona, where I was stationed for firefighting, and I think it's beautiful and underrated. And I just got back there. I went there last week, so I'm gonna say Southern Arizona.
All right, cool. Next question: what is one thing on your bucket list that you have yet to do besides the book? Because you've already done that.
Yes, dude, that means whatever I say now, I better be damn sure, because whatever I say on your podcast comes true. Oh man. I'd really like to pay for a vacation for like my family and now my fiance's family to go on together. I think that'd be really cool. And to have enough money, that means that I added a lot of value to other people's lives, that I have a lot of money, and then I can afford to pay for that vacation for my close family members.
Okay. All right, cool. And that's another first to come up on the podcast. And it's a solid one too, I will say. Good one.
Yes, 2 for 2.
And the last one, and this is a 2-parter. What is your favorite animal, and have you seen this animal in the wild?
I don't remember what I said last time, but I'm guessing I still said this one, and no, I haven't seen it in the wild. And I would, man, there's so many cool animals. Fuck. I'm going to say wolf.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say wolf. And no, one of my goals is my life dreams is to go to Yellowstone in the winter and see them. And I still have not done that.
Okay. And that is what you said last time too. So yeah.
That's kind of what my go-to is in my head when people ask me favorite questions.
Well, I mean, they're amazing animals. I mean,
it's so just cool, man. Yeah, they're beautiful. And I heard in Yellowstone in the winters, you can see them on certain viewpoints, and they're much easier to see because they stand out against the snow. And then they're also much more active because they can hunt the moose and the elk much easier, because the moose and the elk get pulled down from all the snow.
Right.
So they're actually much healthier in the winter.
Oh, that's cool. Nice.
Yeah.
Really cool. Yeah, I learned something today, among other things too. So, all right, brother. Well, let's wrap this up really quick with once again where our listeners can go find the book, and where they can go connect with you out there in the internet space. So, websites, social media handles. What do you got for us, brother?
I would just AlexStarr.com is where you can find everything. You can sign up for my email every week I put out called Thursday Thoughts, that I just put out a lot of the podcasts I'm reading, I'm listening to, the books I'm reading. Just kind of things that are beyond the status quo to kind of help people wrap their heads around that and kind of move past. So AlexStarr.com, you can go to AlexStarr.com/rewrite the rules book, like I mentioned. And then Instagram's where else I'm most active, Alex H. Starr. But I got to get better at the social media stuff and being consistent. But
yeah, you and me both.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I got my podcast as Rewrite the Rules with Alex Starr too, if you do audio stuff.
All right, cool, man. Yeah, and again, I'll get all those linked up in the show notes so our listeners can go and find them there. Well, Alex, I thank you for coming on again for round 2, and congratulations, on getting the book out there, man. That's awesome,
dude. I appreciate it. That was a really quick 50 minutes.
Yeah, it goes by fast when you're having fun, isn't it? So,
yeah, for real, man.
Well,
Thanks,
all right, brother. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate how you're showing up in the world, and I'm sure all in due time we'll get you back on for round 3, and you can continue on with your repeat offender status on the All Around Adventure podcast, man.
Yes, nice, man. Cool.
All right, right. Thanks, on, brother. All right, thanks a lot.
Later.